My name's Kerry Olitzky. I'm the Executive Director of the Jewish Outreach Institute here in New York City, which has a national focus. Intermarriage is basically the relationship between two people, adult partners, who come from different faith communities of origin, irrespective of where they are today. In many cases, they're not practicing anything, but because of their faith communities and their families of origin, we consider that an intermarriage, sometimes called an interfaith marriage. The reason why it's important for us to work with families, couples, individuals that are in interfaith relationships or marriages is because it affects the majority of North American Jewish communities, and in effect it's a reflection of American society in general. Intermarriage is not something that is restricted to the Jewish community. Intermarriage is really a social phenomenon that cuts across religious barriers and the like throughout the United States and Canada. I think that interfaith couples are more likely to intermarry than in-faith couples. That's what demographers tell us. But that's not the entire story. We don't have enough of a history, particularly in this generation where intermarriage has been so numerous, to see where it's going to take us. And intermarriage is not really the issue, it's how you're raising your children. And so we have to move the conversation away from who you're marrying to how you're raising your children. So if the question you're asking is, will it lead to intermarriage? Well, we don't know entirely, because if over 50% of the community is intermarrying anyhow, then how can we say that one is going to lead to the other? The more important question is, how are families in general raising their children, and can we increase that number? We know statistically about 1/3 of intermarried families are raising their children as Jews. But in some communities, such as a recent study that came out of Boston, it's much higher than that. Well, if they can do it in Boston, they can do it in other parts of the community as well. And so we as an organization are working towards providing those opportunities to help interfaith families raise Jewish children, and then to make sure that those institutions that are working inside of the Jewish community can deliver on the promises that we are making to interfaith families, that they are going to be welcomed and embraced. I think that the best example is our Mother Circle program, in which we identified a number of years ago that women in interfaith marriages, particularly women who are not Jewish in interfaith marriages, who are raising Jewish children, are the most vulnerable. They were off the radar screen of the organized Jewish community, and even Jewish feminists weren't really interested in these women. So we identified them as the target population because, unlike women who are Jewish in interfaith marriages, they are less likely to raise Jewish children than their Jewish counterparts. So we wanted to support the vulnerable population, and we started the first Mother Circle in Atlanta, Georgia, about 5 years ago. There are now, to date, over 150 circles have been established across the country, and come this fall we'll have about 100 circles operating simultaneously. Well, what that means is we're providing the skills to non-Jewish women to raise Jewish children in the community. The second thing which we've discovered, which is really very interesting, is just as these women are raising Jewish children and securing the Jewish future, what we know in the field of social gerontology is that women, whether they're daughters or daughters-in-law, are more likely to make decisions for and about their elderly parents. So in the case of these non-Jewish women who are now caring for Jewish children, they're also put in a position to make decisions about their elderly Jewish in-laws. So not only are they caring for the Jewish future, but they're also concerned about the Jewish past. The easiest way to say it is the numbers. The numbers are so significant that how we respond to the issue of intermarriage will in fact determine what the landscape of the Jewish community will be that we bequeath to our children. There's no issue today, short of perhaps the survival of the State of Israel, that has greater impact on the future of the American Jewish community. And I wanted to get involved with something that I thought could really play a role in shaping the future of American Jewish history. Well, right now we've developed 2 pilot models for men in the interfaith community. Men in general in the Jewish community over the last 10 to 20 years have been quite elusive. And secondly, there are virtually no programs that exist to work with men who are in interfaith relationships or marriages. So that's one population. The second population that we're exploring is adult children of intermarriage. What does the community do? How do you respond to this unique population? We did some research a couple of years ago on religious identity determinants of children of intermarriage that helped us in both our work on college campuses and our work with children as well. But in this particular case, we really want to explore further what their needs are and then work with equivalent teens as well. I would only add that I would welcome people, because this is not only a personal issue for those with whom there are intermarried family members, but it's also a philosophical, ideological issue that we really have a moral imperative to open our hearts, our homes, and our communities to intermarried individuals, intermarried families, just to recognize that the nanosecond response that we give to people who are intermarried, who are contemplating intermarriage, can determine what our relationship with that individual is and what that individual's relationship will be with the community for the rest of their lives. So our future as a Jewish community depends on your response.